Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Raw Talk with Tanta KD. I'm very happy you guys are here. I'm happy you're taking the time to listen to this today. And this episode is something that really does mean a lot to me because it is based on some of my travel experiences. And these are things that I haven't really shared with that many people because I haven't really had much of the time to do it and I didn't really feel like doing it either. So I do think it is important because there is that famous line, which is, I don't just live in a world, but a world lives in me. And there is a huge world that lives inside of me. And I feel like I'm finally at that point in my life where I am ready to share it with you guys because I just want to. I feel like it's the time to do it. And I want to share my personal stories with you guys, my personal journey. And in the future episodes, I will be referring to a lot of my travel experiences. So that is why I think it's good to kind of start from the ground up. So without further ado, in this episode, I am going to be talking about the year that I spent in Australia. And for those of you who do not know, which I'm sure the majority of you guys do know because you didn't grow up under a rock, is Australia is the largest island and the smallest continent. And I think they have a total right now of about 26 million people. And the size of Australia is roughly the size of the US. So it's a huge country, huge. And if you think about it, 26 million people living there. Wow. And in the US, we have close to what, 300 million right now. So there is a big difference, although there were quite a few similarities. And Australia, I had been there before. Australia, I went there for the very first time when I was 12 years old. I went there and we went there with my brother and my sister to visit my aunt and my uncles that live there. And I had a phenomenal time. And even before I had gone there on a vacation with my brother and sister, I remember I had written I had written a letter to my parents asking them if I could drop out of school and move to Australia and study in Australia. That's how big of a dream Australia was for me. It was, I just wanted to go there. I wanted to experience it. I had been watching documentaries with Steve Irwin, I think is his name. And I was like, oh, that's me. I'm going to get a hat and I'm going to be Australian and I'm going to, fight the snakes and hang out with the kangaroos. That was my dream. Um, and it's funny because my dad always tells the story that when I was a little kid, that they didn't need to hire a babysitter for me because I would just watch Pippi Longstock on repeat. And literally, like I must have seen that film 1,000 times. I would watch it and rewatch it and rewatch it and rewatch it and rewatch it and just sit and watch it. She was my idol. I wanted to be like her. She was a person who, you know, didn't care what anybody thought. She marched to the beat of her own drum and was traveling, and that was my dream, honestly. So, like I said, I'd been there when I was 12 years old with my brother and sister, had a great time with my aunt and my uncles. We could see quite a bit of the landscape, and it was a really great time. And so then I'd gone back to school and everything like that. And, at the time I was studying in a community college in Bellingham. I was also working, I think, 3 jobs. I just wasn't feeling it, honestly. I was like, you know what? There's so much more to life than this rat race that I'm in. I want more for my life. I know there's something else out there. I just know it. And so I followed my heart. I contacted my aunt and uncle. I asked them if I could live with them for maybe the first month or so and if that would be possible and this, that, and the third. And this was 2010. And when I had started planning was 2009. But back in 2009, 2010, let's be real here. You're not going to see I'm sorry, but I didn't know anybody going to Australia back then from the US for a year. That's like dropping out of school for a year, literally not having much of a plan. So there weren't really very many people that I could ask their opinions. There was one girl I found. It was a friend of a friend of a sister of a friend. It was, I mean, through 8 streets, I could contact this girl, and she gave me some advice. Really kind girl. And she had told me, okay, you're going to need to get the working travel visa and you're going to love it. You're going to have great experiences. So I thought, okay, let's do this. So again, I was working as a waitress and had saved as much money as I could. My aunt and uncle were kind enough to pay for my flight there. So that really helped me out a lot. And I knew that once I arrived there, I was going to be working. So I knew I was going to be fine. So 2010, I'm 20 years old. I go to Australia, naive, 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 naive. I was so naive when I went there. I'm still naive, but I was very naive. I mean, I had arrived there. I remember I was so excited. I had my little backpack and all my little things. I had binoculars. And I just thought I'm going to be sitting on trees and watching birds. I don't know what I thought, but I arrived so naive. And I remember the first time I had arrived at that airport, I directly had gotten stuff stolen from me without even knowing. And I think it's because they probably saw how much of a in a daydream I was when I got there because I was just so happy. And had taken a bus to visit my aunt and my uncle that lived there. Really lovely people. I love them very much. And they live in such a great area, which is close to a mountain there. It's called Mount Majuro. And I remember some of the first days, first weeks, I was hiking on that mountain and I was hiking next to hundreds of kangaroos with baby joeys. And there were not very many, if any, people that I saw on this particular mountain. So it was kind of me with like 100 kangaroos. Luckily, I wasn't, trying to intimidate them or harm them. So, you know, they weren't doing that to me. So I was respectful to them. And that had to be one of the most incredible times in my life. I did have a lot of inner turmoil at that time in my life. So I found that going for hikes and spending time in nature was very therapeutic for me, and being around the kangaroos definitely did that. And I had gotten a job there at a place called Boost Juice, which was also a very funny experience because I found out later that Boost Juice was like one of the where like all the cool girls were working or something. I don't know. It was apparently a big deal to get a job at Boost Juice. I didn't know, but I remember I took the job very seriously and, was trying to do a good job. And I actually had a fun time there. And Boost Juice, man, those drinks were so good. I miss those. I really do. So once I was able to save up a little bit of money, I decided I want to go to New Zealand. New Zealand is close by to Australia. For those of you who don't know, it's on the so if you're looking at Australia on a map, it's on the right side, bottom right, north, east, south, something like that. You just look it up on a map. And I had arrived in Christchurch. There had just been an earthquake there, but I did find the people to be some of the most friendly people in the entire world. So friendly. You could be anywhere there and they'd be like, "Hi, my name's Jane and this is my husband Bob. How are you?" And I'd be like, "What's going on?" And that's just how they were. They were talking to you as if they had known you their whole life, and I thought that was pretty cool. So I had spent my first night in a hostel there and I had met 5 different people. One was from Denmark, one was from Germany, and the other girl was from Israel. And we decided, let's rent a car and let's drive around New Zealand together, which, like I said, very naive of me looking back, but heck, it all worked out, and I had one of the best times of my whole entire life. I'll never forget, that's when Kings of Leon was so popular, and we're just driving around hearing all this Kings of Leon. We had the best time. We went over mountains, we went on hikes where it would take us 2 to 3 days, and we were in an area where the don't quote me on this, but it's something like the grass reflects into the sky, and it's some of the most beautiful stars that you're ever going to see in your entire life. We just had the best time. And the girl from Israel was making this coffee. She had brought with her like a little portable stove or something, and she was making coffee. And wow, I mean, that was for me, that was magical, a very magical time in my life. Just the hikes, the scenery. It was gorgeous. It was so gorgeous. I mean, wow. And yeah, so we went over Arthur's Pass, Mount Cook. But then what I had found out is that I had an aunt and an uncle living there that I had no idea even existed. They were my long lost aunt and uncle, apparently. No idea. You know what I mean? You're just traveling. Oh, yeah, your aunt and uncle live in New Zealand. You're like, wait, what? Like, where am I? What's going on? So, my uncle, I, I don't really know how the whole thing works. But, anyways, this guy was somehow related to me. And they had said, you know what? You know, when you're finished with your little travel around New Zealand, you're more than welcome to stay with us. And I thought, why not? What do I have to lose? So I had been staying at a hostel nearby. It was my last days in New Zealand. I thought, let me spend it with this long lost family that I never knew I had. But hey, so I'm staying at this hostel and I'm getting ready to leave to go visit them. And I have my backpack and I have my little scrubby little outfits. You know, when you're traveling, you're more of kind of what's practical here and not what's, going to look elegant. So I just put on what I had, a little hat. Probably not looking all that great, but for me, I was feeling good. I'd showered at least. And I'm getting ready to check out of the hostel, and I asked the lady if she could order me a taxi. And she goes, "Oh, you're going to that part of town?" And I said, "Well, what do you mean?" And she goes, "Oh, darling, that's a very rich area." And I was like, "Okay." And I just thought to myself, I didn't think anything of it. I thought, okay, maybe it's a rich area, but maybe they're, you know, living in a normal house or something. So, anyways, I pull up to the house, and I pull up to the house. You can literally think Fresh Prince of Bel Air, where you pull up to a mansion, white everywhere. I have my backpack. I'm looking super like scrubby and grubby. And I just pulled up there and I'm like, oh no. Like, oh no. Like, these people are loaded. And yeah, so taxi driver leaves. I'm just standing there like, all right, you got this. Like, go knock on the door. I knock on the door. My aunt answers and she goes, "Oh, you're here. Well, okay. You're kind of early." And I was thinking, "Uh-oh." She goes, "I'm sorry. You are a little bit early, but yeah, go ahead. Come on in." And I was like, "Okay." And she goes, "Well, I got to tell you, we're having a tea party." And I was like, "Oh, no." They were having a tea party. A tea party. And I'm a person, I eat with a fork. I haven't really mastered the fork and the knife. So when I go to this tea party, I'm sitting down. I sit down there looking scrubby, guys. I'm telling you, like, I can't stress that enough. And very fancy people. I pull up to sit where I need to sit. They have like friends over and stuff at this tea party. And I'm just trying to pretend that I know what I'm doing with all these utensils. And I'm just like using this spoon and this small fork and just pulling everything together. And they're asking me all these questions and I'm trying to be proper, but it's just not working. So the friends left and I ended up getting to know them, the nicest, kindest people ever. We had such a great time. They I found out they actually owned a winery in New Zealand. And we bonded. We really bonded. I had found out my uncle actually had the same exact birthday as me. And that really made us bond quite a bit, I have to say. And so towards the end of the trip, I had told them I'm going to be leaving, but they actually said, "Please don't leave. Like we like you so much. Please don't leave." And you can get a job here, you can work here. This is a better option for you because when you travel and you go to these places, you don't have the guarantee that you're going to be safe. You don't have that stability. And I told them, look, I understand your worries, I understand your concerns, but this is really what I want to do. And so they ended up taking me to the train. And yeah, I'll always be grateful for that time with them. Very wonderful people. So from there, I ended up going to Bundaberg, and some of you may know it as the ginger beer area. So there's a very famous ginger beer, which is not with alcohol for those of you who think it is. It's actually alcohol free, and it's so good. It almost tastes like a ginger ale, but way better than the ginger ale. It's one of the best things ever. So Bundaberg is known as a farming town in Australia, and my goal there was to earn some more money. I thought, okay, well, I got to keep this trip going, so I'm going to have to work and travel, work and travel. Let me go to Bundaberg. Well, Bundaberg was interesting to say the least. I had been at this hostel where you kind of put your little name on the wall, which sounds strange, I know. And then every day people from different farms come to pick you up, and it's kind of like a gamble, like an eight ball of you don't know who's coming to pick you up. You don't know what farm you're going to go to. So I got up the next day, waited on the couch to see if somebody was going to pick me up to go work on a farm. And they did. So I ended up going to pick peppers. And let me tell you guys, picking peppers was for me very, very, very hard. Very hard work. Very hard. I remember they had given huge garbage bins. So what you had to do is you had to carry this garbage bin, fill it up with as many peppers as you possibly could. And once it was full, you leave it there and you put your little sticker on it. And based on how many garbage bins you can fill up, that's how much money you would get. I was okay. I would say I was average. Some people were so fast, I couldn't believe my eyes. Some people were so slow, I couldn't believe my eyes. That I was just kind of picking those peppers. After that, I said, look, I can't do this anymore. I was in so much back pain. And I know that sounds a little bit arrogant, but I was in a lot of pain. I respect the people that do the job. Wow. I respect you, but it was not for me. And actually, in Bundaberg, the worst job you could get was picking tomatoes. If you were picking the tomatoes there, I had a heart for you because they made like $1 or something for a garbage bag filled with tomatoes. I mean, they weren't making much money, but the people there were really cool. So what ended up happening is I kept getting little bites on me at night. I don't think I stayed there. I think I was there maybe a week or something, but I was getting these little bites on me. And then I went to my roommate and I said, I'm getting these bites on me. And she goes, I think it might be bed bugs. The guy that was here before you had bed bugs. And I go, what? Why didn't anybody tell me there was bed bugs here? And they said, yeah, the guy before you had an infestation of bed bugs. I was like, oh, great. So I go down to the lady at the reception and I said, hey, I think there's bed bugs in the bed. Like, can I get a refund? She goes, you won't get a refund unless you prove to me and you show me that bed bug. You can't have proof without proving it to me. And I was like, oh, great. So I go down the bed. For some reason, I couldn't find the bed bugs. I was like, well, who knows? Maybe it's mosquitoes. I had never even had bed. I had never heard of bed bugs. You know, what is that phrase we have? Sleep tight, don't let the bed bugs bite. I didn't understand that really. And also, I didn't think I was ever going to get bed bugs, but I got bed bugs. And here's the thing about bed bugs. You're going to know you have bed bugs because they bite in a line. So you're going to wake up if you see a line that of bites, that's how you know you got bed bugs. So the next day I was like, "You know what? I got to get out of this place. I can't do this anymore. It's too much for me." So when you check out, you have to bring your sheets down to the reception. So I had taken the sheets off of my bed, and that is when I saw all of the bed bugs. There were so many bed bugs on that bed. I couldn't believe my eyes. I was like, oh my goodness, I was living above this colony of bed bugs. It was like Bugs Life down there, but for bed bugs. So finally, I took it and I threw it at the lady and I said, "There's your proof." And that was just one of those moments where I was like, I just got to get out of this place. But when I was in Bundaberg, I had met a girl there, and we had decided, you know what? Let's go woofing together. And for those of you who don't know what woofing is a program that they have in, I think, a few countries. I don't know, but definitely in Australia, where you go to work for people and you do little jobs that they have, maybe gardening or some roof work, whatever. And if you do that, then you get free accommodation and free food. So I decided, let me try this. And also, what I thought about it was it's going to be a cool experience because if I'm going to be here in this country, I want to have a cool experience. I had heard of a lot of, um, especially Americans that were going to Australia and they just spent their time in Sydney. And I was like, I don't want to be one of those people, those little prissy people that just go to stay in Sydney. Like, let me have a real experience. Like, if I'm going to do this, let me do it right. And sorry, no disrespect to those people. That's also an experience. But I wanted a different experience. Let's put it that way. So decided to do this woofing thing. And you know what? Me and this girl got really lucky because we ended up with this guy who also lived not in a mansion but in a really nice house and had so much property, and the work we did was so easy. I mean, honestly, sometimes he would say, "Oh, can you just clean my drains?" Or honestly, some days he didn't want us to do anything, and we got free food, free accommodation. But it was a little interesting because he lived in this house and he had a groundskeeper who also lived on the property. But then he also had, now listen to this real close. He had his son's wife's mother living on the property. His son's wife's mom was from Sri Lanka. So she was also living there. And I also don't know what that was all about, but it was a little iffy, I have to say, to where I didn't know what was going on. It was a bit weird. Nice guy. He always gave us a glass of whiskey. He was sitting drinking his whiskey all night in his chair, giving us whiskey, and we're just having fun. But one night when I was in bed, I had heard frogs really, really, really loud. And thousands. I'm not just talking about one. I'm not talking about two. I'm talking about thousands. We were living on land. We were living on like land and a nice house, like on land. We had our own little bungalow, I guess you could call it, which was outside his house. So we had like a few bungalows, and so all these frogs were there. Well, got really scared, ended up contacting the groundskeeper, and he said, "Those are cane toads." And I said, "Well, what are cane toads?" He said, "Those are poisonous frogs. They're not native to Australia. You have to kill them." And I was like, "What? Kill them? I don't want to kill a frog." It's like, "Yep, that's what you have to do. They don't belong here. You got to kill them. We got to get rid of them. And I'm thinking, ooh, 9. And that was crazy because I remember I was outside and it was just imagine being outside in the dark on a large piece of land and all around you is like thousands of frogs, poisonous frogs with a little glowing thing on top of them. And you know you're supposed to kill them, but you can't. And but you know they're poisonous. So that was really a wild experience. And it was a great time. We ended up so he had his house, him and his wife were separated, but we ended up doing some work for his wife who definitely was a lot stricter than he was. We had to paint all of her ceilings and walls, and that was a lot of work, I have to say. That's why I was also kind of over that at one point because she was a bit demanding and she was not happy with our work either because I feel like she didn't explain it all that well what needed to be done. And like I said, in just that you know, in this in the events of what I'm telling you guys, there's so much more than what I can tell you guys. It's just in a 1 year, so much happens, but I'm going to tell you like the main parts. And I was in more areas than this, but I'm just going to give you a brief rundown because I think that's the best way to do it, really. So after this whole woofing thing, I think we went to like a beach area for a while. And then I realized, oh no, I got to get as quick as I can to the airport because one of my friends is coming to visit. And when I tell you guys it was crunch time, it was crunch time. Like I needed to get and pick her up or else she was going to be there by herself. So I had like booked a bus and it was 18, 20 hours straight. And I'm like, I just got to get there. I cannot have her alone at the airport when she arrives. How rude would that be? Made it in the nick of time to get her. Thank goodness. So once she arrived, her and I also had a really wonderful time. We went to the Blue Mountains. We were in New Year's, Sydney in New Year's. We spent Christmas with my family. We had fun experiences, fun times. We did a lot of driving. We saw a lot. We met some cool people. And that was a really fun time. And I also discovered that I had more family in Australia that I didn't know that I had, if that makes sense. It was interesting finding out I have all this family. They were my cousins or something. I don't really know. So me and my friend ended up staying with them. They were really cool people as well. That was a great time, honestly. Um, so once I had gotten her back, I think she was there. I can't remember how long. I want to say 2 or 3 weeks she was staying with me. But after that, I decided I want to go to a place called Melbourne. Some of you guys might pronounce it Melbourne, but it's actually Melbourne. And I had a really cool time there too. I met really cool people. I stayed in a hostel, had fun moments. It's a great city. They have good coffee there. They always say if you don't like the weather in Melbourne, then wait 5 minutes. And I really loved that city. I loved it because it reminded me also a little bit of in a weird way of Seattle. It's got that kind of grungy scene and it's got so many little hidden gems. You're not going to see everything all at once there. You kind of have to really find those little areas. And they have really good Italian food there. They killed it. I mean, that town is fabulous. So I had definitely stayed in some hostels there for a while. And one crazy story that I have is I had been out drinking with some people. We had had a really fun night out, drank quite a bit. And during that time of my life, I actually didn't drink much, to be honest. I wasn't really much of a big drinker. I don't know, for especially for my age, I was 20. I feel like the majority of the people in that age were drinking a lot, going out every night. Also the people that were in Australia, working at the hostels, they wanted to have that party scene. they wanted to do that. But that wasn't really my thing. To be honest, it really wasn't. I was more not into it. But that night I decided, you know what, I'm going to go out with these cool people that I met. I'm going to have a fun time. And we did. But one of the things is I am a person when I'm ready to go, I'm ready to go. And I'm not necessarily going to tell the people, I'm not going to wait for them to tell me it's time to go. I'm going to go when I want to go. And that night, I decided I'm going to go. I'm going to walk back to the hostel. And it was 2, 3 in the morning at this point. And I had started walking. And I was dreaming. I was also in dreamland. I had been walking through the Chinatown, walking. The thing about me is I have a really good sense of direction. So I'm a person, if I'm, no matter where I am, I'm going to figure out where I got to go. And I'm really good at it. I'm very good. So I knew where I had to go, but I knew it was going to be a little bit of a walk. I think I'd also gotten like something to eat in this time, walking. And I get to this main street, and all of a sudden, well, before this had happened, I had seen my lucky numbers. It said Cafe 444. And I remember thinking, wow, Cafe 444. Like, I'm surrounded by angels, you know? It's my lucky numbers, 444. And so I'd seen that cafe. Then I kept walking. I got to the main street. And then all of a sudden, a taxi comes, like literally, like, and then starts yelling, "Get in my car." And I look at him and I go, "I'm not getting in your car." "Get in my car." And I go, "I'm not getting in your car." I'm thinking, who does this guy think he is? "I'm not getting in your car." "Get in my car." And he said it. And I was like, oh my gosh, okay. Like, I don't know if this is the bone collector or what, but like, shoot, I got no choice. I'm getting in your car. So I got in his car. And as soon as I get in the car, I had heard somebody screaming from behind me, "Why did you take her? Why did you take her? She was mine." And I was shocked. I looked at the taxi driver and I said, "Thank you. You just saved my life." I had been followed. I was being followed when I was going on this walk by a complete stranger. And if it wasn't for this taxi driver, I do not know. I do not know what would have happened, but I'm very thankful for good people out there in this world. And there are very good people, and that taxi driver was one of them. And I'm very thankful for that. Very thankful. So when I was in Melbourne, I decided I wanted to get a job there. I had applied at a few places. I was going online, but I wasn't really having any luck with anything. So I thought, okay, I'm not having any luck online. Let me get on the ground. Let me walk around, see if I could find something. And there was an Italian restaurant that was they were looking for people. They said they were looking for people. So I thought, okay. I walked in and I said, "Hey, are you guys hiring?" And they said, "Yep, yep, we're hiring. We're looking for somebody to help in the back of the kitchen. Give us your bag. You can come and start now." And I thought, well, all right, what do I got to lose? Let me just start now, you know? Today is your trial day. We're going to see if you fit in here or not. Okay. Gave him my bag. And it was an awful experience. I wasn't fast enough for this lady. She was screaming at me. I mean, it was awful. It was in an Italian kitchen, and I'm just trying to cook. I mean, it was my first day. I didn't know what I was doing at that point in my life. I didn't even know how to make rice. I could only make scrambled eggs, genuinely. And I was trying. I'm in there, you know, trying to make gnocchi and noodles and thinking, I don't know. And she's just yelling. And I don't know how I made it the whole day there with this lady like yelling, but I did. But at the end of the day, she gave me my bag back and said, "Give me the apron back." And she said, "We don't want you to work here. You're not fast enough. We had somebody working here that was way faster than you. They were from China and they were really fast, and you're not fast." And I was so upset after this. I was so upset. I felt really upset. I felt angry. And I remember thinking, I want to get as far away from that evil lady as possible. As far away from her. She was so evil, this lady, so evil. And so I went online because here's the thing. I told you guys I wanted to have the real Australian experience. So one of my goals was to go work in the outback. And so I had gone online, done some research, and I found this place called Kununurra, which is Western Australia near Broome. And I thought to myself, perfect. It's as far away from this place as I can get, which is exactly what I need right now. And this is a different atmosphere. It's really nature. They have something there called the Kimberleys, the Bungle Bungles. Like it is just wow. It's good weather. They got it all there, but it's dangerous. So I had booked a hostel there and I had booked my train. Not my train. I had booked the bus. And the bus from Melbourne to Kununurra, I don't even know how long that took. I feel like it was a few days. But in that time in my bus, it was absolutely beautiful. I saw the most gorgeous sunsets there. I saw the most beautiful landscape. It made me really fall in love with Australia. It made my heart open. Even being in the bus and having that movement is such a beautiful time listening to music and seeing the nature. I absolutely love that. So I arrive in Kununurra and the guy from the hostel, the owner actually picks me up, which really nice guy. He was the owner of the hostel I was staying at, which was owned by a family, by a brother and a sister, some of the most nicest people I've ever met in my whole life. And he had picked me up and I told him, "Look, I thank you so much. I do need to get a job here." He'd made some phone calls, but unfortunately the places that he knew were not hiring. So I decided I had in the area where I was, there were a lot of farming jobs. Some of the people were working at the supermarket there in Australia, which was a really good thing because you get on Sundays, I think double pay or something. It was really great. And I had called a place, a sandalwood nursery. I had called them and I had said, "Hello, my name is Katie. I'm from the US, from Washington State, which is really close to Canada, and I'm really hoping to work for your sandalwood nursery." I ended up getting that job at the sandalwood nursery, and I found out later that the lady that hired me, she came to me actually. She came to me and she said to my face, "You know what? We wouldn't have hired you if we knew that you were American. We thought you were Canadian. That's why we hired you. But, well, now you're here, so the job's yours." And I remember that was one of my first tastes of, okay, seems like there's a lot of hatred towards Americans here. And that was something I definitely experienced throughout my trip in Australia was a general hatred towards Americans. And maybe you're thinking, "Oh no, they were joking." No, they weren't joking because it was a hatred. So that was definitely my first taste of it. But at the Sandalwood Nursery, I met some of the best people in the entire world. I It was a very magical time in my life. We were working in 100-degree weather, 100-degree weather out there, huge spiders. In the hostel that I was staying at, we had very dangerous animals. Even in our hostel, we had in our kitchen, which was a half inside, half outside kitchen, we had a redback spider. in our kitchen. So one bite and you're dead. We had brown snakes, also poisonous snakes, coming into the hostels. And we were also right next to the hostel was actually kind of in a dangerous area of the town. The reason for that is it was in an area where there were a lot of Aboriginals. And no, not all Aboriginals are dangerous, not at all. It's just in that particular area. Um, the thing is, for those of you who don't know about Australia, is there's a lot to be said about the Aboriginals. The way I describe it is it's similar to the Native Americans in the US, where, in Australia, the Aboriginals were there first and they had got their land taken from them. And the government had basically given them, oh, we took your land. Now you have problems. Here's some money. So just gave them money. And they didn't, a lot of them, not all, I can't generalize here, but okay, in that particular area where I was, they didn't know what to do with the money. I mean, what was money for them? Money was nothing. What's the meaning of money? So I would see little kids running around with 50 Australian dollars in their hands, going to the gas station to buy goodies, where I thought, okay, that's a lot for a little kid, but for them it was just like, oh, it's nothing. And I do think a lot of them did turn to alcohol to deal with their suffering and their pain, which I have no judgment towards that. I probably would do the same. And I'm sure it wasn't easy for them to go through a lot of the things that they did go through, which they went through a lot. And I spent actually quite a bit of time with the Aboriginals there, even though many people told me that, oh, it's not safe, it's dangerous. But I was hanging out with them. And one of the things that I did learn from them is, it still sounds strange to you guys, but we were hiding behind bushes. And I remember I asked that, why are we hiding behind, like we were hiding behind bushes? I said, why are we hiding behind bushes right now? And they said, oh, we're watching people. And my interpretation of that was that they had felt so disconnected maybe from the Australians that were there. They were just watching them. It was like almost like this separation in a way. And the town I was living in, there were also limitations on the alcohol. If there were a lot of fights, a lot of cars being lit on fire, a lot of the areas, it was just a lot of Aboriginals sitting in the grass just drinking every day. It's just the way it was, especially in that area. I don't know why. And that was that was a very interesting experience, I have to say. Was I had so much sympathy and empathy for them. They were really good people, but there was such a disconnect. There was such a disconnect. And so, yeah, that was definitely, there's so much more I could say about that, but it's really hard to find the words, to be honest with you. And yeah. So when I was working at the Sandalwood Nursery, I made some of the best friendships of my life there. I made a lot of friends. One of them from Sri Lanka. I'm still friends with him now. He lives in Germany. Really good guy. We actually travel later together, also to India. And the majority of my friends there were actually from Taiwan. And then I had another friend from Japan, and I learned so much from them. They were so smart, so intelligent. When we were working at the Sandalwood Nursery, they were showing me ways to be a little bit quicker with things. And the landscape in that area will take your breath away. The way the sun hits the red rocks there. Oh, wow. I mean, that was just really something. It really was. It was one of the best experiences of my entire life. And that's something I never regret. And without that mean Italian lady being so mean to me, from such a bad experience to come to something so good as Kananara. I mean, wow. I stayed at that hostel for probably 3 or 4 months. It was almost like a home. It wasn't kind I mean, it was my home there for a long time because I was working there. I was paying my rent. I had celebrated my 21st birthday there, and I met just cool people, different people. My roommates, when I had first got there, they were from Germany, and they were actually both deaf, and they were also a couple. They were also a lesbian couple, and also very nice people. They had actually ended up getting in a fist fight a few weeks later, and it's hard to know which one hit which one because you never know in those situations who was telling the truth. But that was definitely all very new experiences for me. And it was a cool environment because in that hostel, you're with people from everywhere. You're with people from France, from Germany, from Taiwan, from Japan. And you start to really realize how alike we all are. How alike we are. It doesn't matter where you come from. That's one thing I've always said. It doesn't matter where you come from. A heartbreak hurts the same in every country. I mean, we're all so much more alike than we realize. It's just a lot of us have different values and different experiences, but I do personally feel like we're all connected. And yeah. So leaving Kununara was a very hard decision for me. The reason why, there we go, I remember now. The reason why I left Kununara. Okay, so like I told you guys, working on a sandalwood nursery 5 days a week in 100-degree weather with long sleeve t shirts, long pants, and hats because you don't want the chemicals, which are supposed to be organic, to spray on you. So I'm working, and all of a sudden I have this pain on my right side of my stomach, and I'm just in so much pain, and I'm just like, oh my goodness, like, oh, this hurts so bad. And it hurt when the clothes were touching it, and I didn't know what it was, but I'm such a stubborn person that I kept going to work. And I told the girls I was working with from Taiwan, my friends, yeah, I'm in pain, but I gotta show. The show goes on, the show goes on, and it almost looked like blisters on my stomach. That's the only way to describe it. And I was like, the show must go on, the show must go on. And then finally they were like, you need to go to a doctor, Katie. And I said, I'm not going to a doctor. At work, they had called the name. It was like the groundskeeper guy, and they said take her to the doctor. And so he ended up taking me to the doctor. Well, I found out I had shingles. Shingles. And guys, I don't know how many of you guys have had shingles, but they are painful. They are so painful. And I had had them for like 2 or 3 days. And I was working in 100-degree weather, and I was in so much pain. I got to the doctor. He said, you're no longer infected, but you need to stay at home. You definitely need to stay at home. So I was staying in my hostel for a while and just trying to get better. Just trying to get better. But it was weird because the workplace was calling me, and it was almost like they were saying, don't come back to work. And I don't know if that's what they were saying, but that's definitely what I interpreted, because they didn't want me getting everybody, like knocking out the whole crew that they had, which was 100 people, even though I wasn't contagious. So the message I got was, please leave, kind of a thing, like, don't come back. I don't know. It was weird. So I said, okay, well, seems like it's time for the next chapter in my life. And that was about after 3 or 4 months. I had spent the last weekends with my favorite people there. We had a going away party and said we'll definitely see each other again because those were my best friends. And I left. And from there, I ended up going back to Canberra to visit to see my aunt and uncle there. For those of you who do not know, Canberra is the capital of Australia. Sydney is not the capital. Now the funniest thing is I had known this because I had been to Australia when I was 12 years old, that Canberra is the capital. And I remember we were on spring break and there were these two guys with Australian accents trying to get all these girls. And I remember thinking it was a darn good Australian accent, but something was off with these guys. And I remember looking at them and I said, "Tell me the capital of Australia," because everybody thinks it's Sydney. And they said, "Sydney." And I said, "You guys are not from Australia." And they said, "Please, please don't rat us out. Don't rat us out. This is how we're getting all the girls." And I thought, my goodness, with these little Australian accents, you guys are getting all these girls here in Mexico. And they actually were. It worked. So, yeah, capital of Australia, Canberra. Don't forget it. So, yeah, went and spent a little bit of time with my aunt and uncle from there, had a really good time. And then I have another uncle that was living there, very amazing person. He decided he was going to take me to my next job in Marysville. So he had driven me there and we had a lot of really good talks along the way. He had bought me a bear coat jacket and a sewing kit, told me I should really learn how to sew. And I remember he asked me, "Katie, how old are your brother and sister?" And I said, "I think they're," and he said, "Don't think it, know it." And I was like, "Okay." I was like, "That's actually really good advice." So I had arrived in Marysville, and I think a lot of you might be interested to know that there are ski resorts in Australia. I had no idea, but there are. Marysville was my next job, which was going to be for cross country ski resort. I didn't know it either. It sounds like an oxymoron, but this was a town that had actually been through quite a bit because they had experienced a fire that had burned down quite a bit of their town and killed a few people, and it definitely affected the community tremendously. It really did. It was a really hard thing to see actually because it had happened in 2009, the fire. And I think at this time was 2010, 2011 when I was there. So it was fresh. It was sad, but it was also a very beautiful place. And I enjoyed my time. I was working as a barista. I was even on the TV there. I remember I was shown on the news station making coffee, which I was really proud of. Yeah, I worked there for quite a while. Also met some really cool people there from Hong Kong. They had showed me yum cha, which is a type of cuisine. I think it's a Chinese cuisine. It's also a way of life, something like this. They had taken me to Chinatown quite a bit, and we really had a lot of fun. And one of the craziest stories I can tell you about this is so working at the cross country ski resort, we were allowed 24/7 whenever we wanted to use the equipment. It was absolutely no problem. And I decided after my shift, I'm going to go use the skis and go cross country skiing. When I had got the skis, it was probably 4 p.m. And I had not thought all of this through at all. I had gone deep into the woods with the skis. And next thing I know, it is dark. It is It's not pitch black, but darn close to it, in the middle of the woods. I'm on skis. I kind of know where I am, but I'm definitely far out. I'm like 2 miles out of where I need to be. And I remember I had no phone on me. I was terrified. I was completely terrified. I'm stuck there with my skis. It's cold, pitch black. I'm thinking the worst that could happen is I could genuinely get stuck out here and freeze to death. I don't know. I don't know if to death, but I mean, definitely it's just not where you want to be. But I remember praying to God, and I just said, God, please, please, please get me out of this situation. And I started going in a direction where I thought it could be the right direction to go. I felt like, okay, it's got to be this way to get back to where I was staying, because I was staying on the mountain in a cabin there. And by the grace of God, I made it out of there. And I remember yeah, the groundskeeper of that area definitely had a word or two to say to me when I got out, when he saw that, because they had been worried, and they said, "What were you thinking? Did you not think that it wasn't the smartest to go out that late in the day? And you know how lucky you are." And oh man, uh, but that was wild. I didn't stay there that long. I didn't really like that job that much. I also didn't really enjoy the people I was working with there. I didn't like them at all, really. But one of the coolest things that my boss did when I said I'm going to be leaving is we had a ski store in there. And he said, "All right, you got," it was me and another guy leaving. He said, "You have 5 minutes to go into this store. You can pick out one thing." And I remember thinking, oh gosh, like, let me just get the most expensive thing. Like, at that time, I didn't really know. I don't know why I didn't know. So I just ran in there as quick as I could, and I got like it was like a little sweater or something. I was surprised at myself, actually, because I remember they had really expensive glasses in there, like sunglasses and huge jackets. But I don't know why. I just grabbed a sweater, and that was cool. I feel like that's a dream for a lot of people. Like, just imagine you could go into a store, like any store you want to go into, and you can just pick one thing. But you have 5 minutes, only 5 minutes, so you got to be really smart about it. But yeah, I had left there, and it was wrapping up towards the end of my vacation. So I decided to do my last little road trip by myself. And where I ended up going was Cape Tribulation. I was going to do a yoga retreat there for my last week. I thought, what better way to kind of end things out than to do like a yoga retreat? Cape Tribulation, for those of you guys who don't know, that's in northeastern Australia, and it's the oldest rainforest in the world. And I remember arriving there. I was on a bus there, and there was one. I was the only person on the bus. The driver there was so cool. He was like listening to reggae and stuff, and I was just like, yeah, like just having a good old time going there. So I arrive at this yoga, and honestly, it's so beautiful, Cape Tribulation. Like, it's a really beautiful place. And I had first arrived there. I put my stuff down at this yoga retreat because the retreat wasn't going to be starting till the next day. So I decided, let me go walk around, let's see, discover the place. And I started walking along this little, like, not beach area, but area with sand and water where there's like trees. And I was like, oh, this is cool. And then on my way back, it's like, beware of crocodiles. And I was like, oh no, like, what am I doing? I got to get out of here quick. Because I'd had another moment when I was living in Kananara where I was in an area swimming where the crocodiles are and I didn't even know. So, yeah, that's another thing. If you ever go, you definitely need to be careful because there are some dangerous animals out there. So, yeah, my very first day at this yoga retreat, the guy that was running this place had sat me down and he was like, all right, I'm going to need you to hum with me. Like, and I had to do that. And he was like, no, it's not, that's not how you need to do it. And he was like, hum. And then he's like, all right, let me hear yours. And I was like, hum. And he's like, no. And he kept correcting me. And I'm like, this is just a weird place. Like, it's too much for me. And he kept talking about that he was in India and all these things. And I just thought, this guy is, I don't think he's the real deal. I think he's a crook. So my second day there, I had such a bad feeling because me and this other girl had noticed we were trying to go back down to our rooms, but we had noticed there was an area where we literally could have fallen down off the roof. Like, it's an area where you think the stairs are going to go down, but it's a drop. It's hard to explain, but her and I were like, we got to get out of here. Like, bad vibes. The next day, we went to the guy and we said, look, we don't want to be here anymore. We have a bad feeling about this place. So her and I ended up hitchhiking out of there. And hitchhiking, I do not condone, I do not recommend. However, I did hitchhike and I did have a good experience and I'm still alive. So we hitchhiked. This girl that I had met was from Australia. And so she was going to call her brother who lived close by. She had had an interesting story. She had been married not long, actually, but I think maybe things weren't working out that great with her husband. And I think this trip was kind of something where she needed to work on herself a little bit. So her brother picked us up, and then her brother took us to this area. Her brother was a very interesting character. I don't know how to really describe it, but her brother took us to this guy's house, and this guy was like 70 years old who owned like a ranch. And he had a ranch, and then he had a side house where his son was living in, but the son was a bit, I don't know how to explain it. And the brother had gone to the 70-year-old and said, yeah, this yoga retreat, they don't feel good about this guy there. And then the guy was like, yeah, I'll see what I can do about it. And I'm thinking, what is going on? Like, I had a feeling maybe there was some crime involved. I don't really know. And then I saw that the son that was living in this little shack, and I just, started talking to him, and he said, a girl, he came to me and he goes, a girl died out here. There's a girl's body out here. And I remember thinking, I feel like I also kind of got to get out of this place too, because I'm feeling some bad vibes, very bad vibes. And so that was just strange. And then we ended up going back to the brother's house, and he had put like a Chucky doll, a Chucky doll in the bed. Also, really creepy. And that's a situation where I sometimes really have to tell you guys, I've been in some really weird situations, and I don't know how I'm still alive. So let me knock on wood real quick. Knocked on wood for that. Because these were some weird people and some weird situations. Gotten out of that. And so, yeah, the very last thing that I did when I was in Australia was went to the Great Barrier Reef. Loved that. That was a moment I cried. I definitely cried for that one because that was definitely on my bucket list, and I was happy and proud that I was able to do that. Made me really happy. And then from there, I ended up flying back home. And yeah, I'm really happy that I could at least share some of my stories with you guys, at least a little bit. Obviously, it's not everything. To share all of my stories for 1 year would take a lot more than the amount of time it's taken me to share this with you guys. But yeah, I do think that traveling is one of the best forms of education out there. I don't think I know. I have learned so much from traveling. I've learned so much from the people that I've met along the way. I've learned so much from being in difficult situations and also situations where I have to trust a stranger, which isn't always easy and also isn't always you're not always lucky with that, but I've been lucky, I've been blessed. Obviously, I had my hardships along the way in my on my trip. It was definitely a time in my life where I was having a lot of inner turmoil and I was dealing with a lot of strong emotions. I was learning about myself. I was dealing with the past, but I was open-minded. I was really open for new things. And for anybody out there that is looking to go to Australia for a year and do the work and travel, I do highly recommend it. There's so many cool people that are out there doing the same thing. There's amazing people everywhere in the world. And you'd be really surprised. You'd be really surprised to know how how kind a stranger can be if you're in a bad spot. That the people are really willing to help you even though they don't even know you. Yeah, so really happy I got to share this with you guys. Thank you so much for listening to this podcast. I ask that if you like it, that you please give me 5 stars and that you please follow me as well and share this with somebody if you think maybe it could brighten their day or if you know somebody that is considering doing the work and travel in Australia. And I wish you guys all the best. And until next time, bye.